Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, I've got the privilege of talking to William today. William is a helper to a spiritual leader, and he reached out to want to share some things that have happened at ceremonies over the years. So William, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeremiah. It's a pleasure to be on.
Absolutely. Should we also share right off the bat where these encounters are taking place as well?
So we've had encounters outside of Eugene, Oregon. We've had encounters up in the Sierra Madres, close to a place called North San Juan. And we've had things happen to us out in New York. Close to a little town called Millerton. Those are the ones that I'm comfortable with.
I know Millerton actually very well. I grew up on the East Coast. That's very interesting. I'm going to let you go ahead and feel free to take us back to where we need to go and share with us what we can learn today.
Okay. So my first readings, I was born in 1961, so I remember Patterson Gimlin film. And then as a young teenager, was a little bit on the hellion side, and was sent to a place for troubled youth. Let's put it at that. And I was into Bigfoot, and the book came out. I don't remember which. And we were in the Black Hills of South Dakota. I lived in South Dakota at that time. And we were a firefighting crew and a logging crew. And we were all into all kinds of crazy stuff. And I started having dreams about Bigfoot. And, the boys started getting nervous because, I was starting to see things and things were coming true. And that's another story. But anyways, we got through fire season, and me and a guy who were in this facility decided that one night we were going to escape. I don't know where we were going because we were deep in the hills of South Dakota in the Black Hills. And we went out a side door and we started walking through the brush. And we were paralleling a road that went up to the main highway. And as we were walking through there, we started hearing something shadowing us. And it's about the time the smell hit us. And then we heard like a rumble. And, we knew exactly what that was. And so we ran for the road and we turned ourselves in. And so I was 16 the first time that I really had an encounter. And so the years go by, and, we start to get older and we start learning things. And sometime in my, my early 30s, I started learning the ways of my people, and I became a helper to a spiritual leader. And he started teaching me things, and we started traveling, and we started doing a lot of spiritual things. And in 2009, he had a dream or a vision about doing this ceremony to help missing children. And it was going to be a 2-day ceremony, and there was going to be fasting and dancing, ceremonial dancing. And we were going to pray for all the children that are missing. And so in 2010, he was having this outside of Eugene, Oregon. And we had never been there before, and it was like a lot of things that happen when you're trying to do a ceremony. Things just fall together, and we found this property, and this man let us use it. And on the first night, something happened late at night. It was a scary thing that happened. I won't go into it, but something came that frightened us. And when we all gathered together underneath an awning, it was raining, and probably about an hour into us being there and starting to relax after this scary event, wood knocking started. And we didn't know about wood knocking then, but it started, and it probably went on once every 10, 15 minutes until dawn. And we didn't know what it was, and now we do. And it was like something was sitting out there, and it was like knocking on the tree, letting us know that it's okay now. Don't be afraid. Because a lot of these places that when we do these things, they happen in places that are very remote, away from the public, so people can't come and spectate. It's invitation only, so we're usually way out in the middle of nowhere. And so we had that happen, and the spiritual leader told us when the ceremony was over that it was Bigfoot. He used a different name. He uses a Lakota name saying Chiye-Tanka. I hear people on the podcast really try to say that word. It's Chiye-Tanka. Now, Chiye is your older brother if you're a male. And Tonka is something that's big. So to his people, the Lakota people, his people, Chiye-Tanka means my big older brother. It's because of the relationship. And he told us that the Bigfoot had come around because in the medicine that he did, leading, that Bigfoot was a protector of children. And so, I mean, we had no reason to disagree. We didn't know. And that's when, and we said, okay. And so we carried on, and 11 and 12 happened. And then 12, we went to the East Coast to look at some property for maybe doing this children's dance again. And then Sandy Hook happened. And so we decided that we would have this children's dance in 2013 on this piece of property that was close to Sandy Hook. And when we got ready, we always have some time to get ready. A couple of the people that we had were sleeping out by where we were going to do this. And they heard something. And when they opened their tent, they saw a big black Bigfoot run across the circle that had been set up to have the ceremony. And it really unnerved them, and they right away came up to the house where everybody was getting ready, because natives like to sit around and drink coffee and smoke cigarettes until the wee hours. And so they came up and they told everybody, and everybody went down, and nothing happened. It was a good thing, praying for those children. And we packed it up, and then in 14, we went to the reservation for ceremony. Now, on the reservation that he would take us to, when we would get there in middle June, there would always be the talk about who saw what. Where did you see the Bigfoot? Where did you see the Chiye-Tanka? Where did you see? People had sightings, and one of the people who came to this place we were at brought a recording. And, it was the first time I had ever heard that long, drawn-out, scream, that they make, the kind of like the Michigan, is it the Michigan tape?
Like the Ohio howl?
The Ohio, yes. So we heard that, and we heard that. We got there late, right? So it was about 8 or 9 o'clock. We listened to that, and we went into lodge, and I won't give it any more than that. We went into lodge, and we didn't come out until about midnight, right? So we're coming out of lodge, and all of a sudden you hear this scream, and it's children. It's more than one kid. It's 2 or 3 kids, and it's that scream that as a parent you hear, your kid's in trouble. And so we all come booking out of the lodge, and these kids come screaming over, and their eyes are wide. And they said there was this little awning built for a cook shack, a cooking area. So in events and ceremonies, when there's fasting, the kitchen is always a good ways away from wherever the ceremony is going to happen, so that the people who are participating, if they're fasting, they don't have to see the food. They said there was something under there. And so, of course, we went running over there, and there was nothing there. But the kids were frightened, and they said it was a Bigfoot and a small Bigfoot, maybe a mother and a child one, But the awning was only about 7 feet tall, and they said the bigger one's head was no higher than the awning. So I'm thinking, under 7 feet. And as we were looking around, because the kids are frightened, the women folk, they're getting frightened, and some of the men were frightened, right? Because this is the middle of nowhere. This is a ceremony where all kinds of things come around. And then we were looking around, and we noticed this floating green orb. And it was only probably the size of a big marble. And it was just staying on the outside of where you could see it, and it was moving, and you almost could see a shape. But when you're like out on the res and it's no moon, no stars, it's black, right? And so this green orb was floating around us, and we watched it, and people got afraid. But like anything, it went on for so long, people went to bed. They really did. And it just stayed out of reach. But when there was me and my daughter and this big biker dude from New York, we were sitting up, and we saw it come, and it floated down by us. You know, it's just this green orb about the size of a big marble, and it stopped by this guy's car, and we got up and we walked over, and there it was. It wasn't a firefly. It was a green orb. Now it's about the size of a golf ball, and it's just like pulsing. And the three of us are looking at it. You know, we're not afraid. It's just this thing, and then it took off across the meadow, and this person had hung a buffalo skull up in the tree to get the meat, let the critters come and get the meat off of it and the flesh off of it. And it zoomed over there, and then it was gone. And we thought, wow, what's going on? And so, you know, we went to bed. The next morning I got up and I went over by the cook shack to see what was going on. And then I jumped the creek. There was a creek there. And I was walking around looking, and about 40 yards from the cook shack was all the watermelon and cantaloupe rinds all laying on the ground. And somebody had eaten all of it, the missing food from the kitchen that we were going to have after we came on lodge. And so as I was watching, you know, looking around, I could see where something big had been moving because I grew up outside, but they weren't leaving tracks. But you could see where they had been moving, and the spread on these strides was probably 5.5 feet. And as I could see where it had moved, because I think there was two of them, and the littler one wasn't as adept as the bigger one at keeping his or her steps. They came up to the other part of the creek, and you had to jump up across the creek, and it was higher elevation. And right at our side of the creek where it was muddy, there was a print, but it looked like a pitchfork. It was probably the center tine from top to bottom was probably 18 inches, 20 inches. And then it had two sides that came out. So it looked like a three tine, probably more like a potato fork, but that was the print. And I didn't know what to make of it because it was deep, but that was either a print or it was a sign. So that was 2014. And then we moved we were out in California. We started to work in California. And in 2015, the leader started talking to us about Bigfoot. He started explaining the knowledge that he had about them being protectors of children, but also spiritual beings that can move between places. You know, the best context that he could put it to us, and he didn't use these words, but I could use the best way I would describe is interdimensional beings that were able to do things that we weren't able to do. And he started teaching us. And one of the things that he taught us early on about Chiye-Tanka was that there's this thing, and I don't know if this is much for people, but there's this thing in ceremonial and spiritual work about working with spirits. If you've been to ceremony, native ceremony, you know the spirits exist. Or if you're not a native, angels would be a good word. He told us that Bigfoot was an ancestor of ours up until about 15,000 years ago, because he had read and heard something. He's pretty smart at piecing together. I think I heard that if you take Bigfoot DNA, someone figured out that about 15,000 years ago is when it changed. The DNA changed, and they became involved with us. So the 95% human is a ancestor of us, but the 5% that is unidentifiable is the essence or the DNA of a being that was from a different dimension that parked itself in an ancestor of ours and made them the way they are. That was his explanation. No reason to doubt it. The man has never lied to us. He's always told us the truth, and everything that he's ever said has always come true. So, you know, he was getting us ready, and then he started telling us that they were around. They liked these children's ceremonies, and they came around and that they wanted to make contact with us. Well, that really weirded a lot of us out. I remember hearing, Jeremiah, that you'd had your own adventures in Oregon, and you can understand when people tell you, this is more than the door opening, the zippering. This is them wanting to come forward, right? Them wanting to step out of the shadow.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, he's kind of calm about it, but he's still a little nervous. And when he's nervous, I'm really nervous. Okay. I take my cues from him. And so we started going out to Millerton in 2015. And we had some friends out there, and then we went over into Massachusetts, signed by Mount Washington. You familiar with that?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So we started doing things at Mount Washington. What we were doing, I'm not going to go into and say the name, but we would put people, and they would sit out in the woods for a number of days. And they would fast, and they would pray, and then they'd be out there a certain amount of days, and then we would bring them in and listen to them. And we started doing that in 15. And in 16, we had a whole bunch of people. There's people that are just starving for native ways, and they want to learn things. And the guy that I work with, he's not adverse to working with non-natives. He says that spiritual knowledge is for everyone, whereas a lot of natives don't think we should do anything with non-natives, but he's not that way. So we were putting a lot of people out there. He would only do 2 at a time. He would do a man and a woman, and he would keep the woman close to where we were, but he would put the men out in the middle of this forest. And all us helpers, we called it the haunted woods. It was creepy. And they would sit out there for 1 to 4 days, right? No water, no food, and they'd be out there praying. And so we were in 16, we were doing this, and we had a lot of people. And it was probably 5th or 6th day. We had taken somebody out and brought somebody down. We were going to put somebody else out, and so we had to go out to the spot where he was using and gather all their things, right? And then take their things to the fire and burn them, and then put the new person's things up and set up their space. And me and the leader and the singer, it was this native guy from California. And his people have Bigfoot songs that they use to talk to Bigfoot and have relationship with Bigfoot, right? So me and the leader and this singer, we were out there with 3 or 4 other people, and we were setting up the site. And the leader had those other guys start to set up the site, and he had me and the singer come with him about 5-10 steps away from they were. And he said, I want you to look over there. And now this forest is old growth, big trees, but a lot of trails, kind of open, but big trees. And he said, I want you to look over here. And so we're looking, because when people like that tell you something, you pay attention because you're supposed to learn something, right? So we're looking over there, and then he asked the singer, he asked Mike, he said, sing that Bigfoot song. Now, Mike has this big voice, so he starts putting it out there, and the leader always has him sing loud. So he's like, he's singing this Bigfoot song. And as we're looking over there, he must have been standing behind a tree. This is the first time I really get a good picture of one. He must have been standing with his back to the tree away from us, right? He just kind of pivoted on his right shoulder. He turned to his right, and his shoulder was on the tree, and he pivoted around to look at us. And the 3 of us were probably 45, 50 feet from him. We're close. He pivots out, and he looks at us. Now, I'm 6'1", 240. He's maybe 6'2", 6'3", and he doesn't weigh any more than me. And he is gray, and he is brown, and he's red, but he's more gray. His face is hairy, but it's very human-like. But it's a hairy face. And when he pivoted, he just looked at us. And Mike is singing, and I'm just like, wow. I don't know what to say. And the spiritual leader is looking at him. And there's something going on there. I don't know what it is. And then the spiritual leader just kind of shook his head, and the Bigfoot that was over by the tree, he shook his head, and he just pivoted back around behind the tree. It probably lasted maybe a minute, maybe a minute and a half. And so we set up the guy's site, and then we went back down to where we were camping. And then that night we had a lodge. And we got in the lodge, and the leader told us that he'd come and let us know that they were going to watch over us and that they would be around. just to give us a heads up. So in 16, we were up there for a while, and it wasn't that bad. You knew they was around, but that sighting was what we talked about, right? And so we got through it. And then in 17, we had a spot in north of Petaluma, California that we did ceremony. And we moved up into the Sierra Madres. Old Vietnam War vet had some land up there. Real crusty, dude, Nice as could be, but real crusty, real hard. And our leader used to be a Marine. And so these two got it on. It's 15 miles from North San Juan. If anyone knows where North San Juan is, it is just the middle of nowhere. And you had to go interstate to 4-lane highway to 2-lane highway, right? And then the 2-lane highway broke down into a gravel road. And then you drove on the gravel road, and then you turned onto a dirt road, and the dirt road was a mile from the gravel to his place, was 1 mile. His own road, not maintained by the city or the county, his own road. And he invited us, his wife was alive at the time, to have ceremony there. We were needing a place. This ceremony, I'm not going to give it its name, but it's 12 days long. Okay. So in 17, we set up there, and we have 4 days where we get ready. Then we have 4 days where we do the actual ceremony. Then we have 4 days that's closing. And anyway, so in 17, we camped all over this land. We had probably 30, 35, 40 people camped all over, right? No issues. And then in 18, we used this land. During this 4 days I was doing things, I slept out in the middle with this other guy. I'm not going to go into this. People who know what I'm talking about know. If they don't, that's okay. So me and this dude were sleeping out in the middle, right? And I woke up, and it was cold, and I something was not off. Something woke me up. And I kind of sat up, and I looked around, and over in the south, it's marked by some fabric. Anyways, I looked over in the south, and we had taken this big gasoline drum. It might have held 200 or 300 gallons when it was empty, and we'd putting it up on this metal stand that the guy had, because that's where he used to keep his gas. Standing over there were 3 sets of red eyes. Now the top of that gas barrel had to be all of 10 or 11 feet. The 3 eyes were standing over there, and they weren't much shorter than the top of that gasoline can. But the thing that I got by looking at them, because it spooked. I'm gonna say it scared it scared me pretty good. The impression that I got was that they were very thin, but I knew who they were. And I looked at them, they looked at me, and I just said, like a lot of times people who do ceremony will tell you, you just look away and pray that it's going to be a good outcome, right? So I just turned away and I went back to sleep. And I told the spiritual leader, and he said, yeah, they were around. And nothing happened. We camped everywhere. And then we get into 2019. And now we've been going to this land for months. We go up there outside of the summer and do sweats. And the leader is telling us that they're coming around, and they want you to know they're around. So in 19, when we were up there, you could feel, when you stopped and paused, you could feel when they were around. And it was changing to the point where you could feel where they were at. You knew that somewhere right over in that thicket, there's somebody over there. And you could feel when they're around. And the feeling was, it wasn't frightening, but it was not soothing either. It was, there was something over there that was powerful. There was a being there that knew more. It was a powerful presence, but it was also, you were safe. I don't know how they were there to make you safe. And so we knew where they were at, and we were getting comfortable with them. And once in a while, you'd hear a wood knock. You might hear a little hoo-hoo, and question it, right? And so in 19, we were really getting comfortable with them. And, we'd seen the 3 big ones the year before. And then when we got started in 19, we get up about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. and we have to get in lodge and we have to do things, and then we come out before the sun to do our thing for the 4 days. We come out before the sun rises, and we're in there, and there's the women are in the lodge and the guys are standing around, and we use these porta-potties, and the porta-potty door slams. Now it's 4:30 in the morning. It's dark. We're up in the mountains. It's dark, and that door slammed so hard it jarred me. And we all looked at each other like, "What was that?" And the leader starts walking over there, and we start heading over there, and the door slams again. They slammed the door, and so we get somebody finds the big. By this time, we have this big spotlight that someone has bought, because evidently, if we're going to see something, they want to see it as bright as you can, right? So they have this huge lumen flash light. We take it over there, and there's nothing there. And the spiritual leader walked over there, and I'll give us some credits. Well, I wouldn't have walked over there. And he just listens. And he said, they're angry what we're doing with the waste. Now, we have these porta-potties, and we are emptying them ourselves. We empty them in with a shop vac into some garbage cans, and then we haul them down the mountainside, and we dump them in these holes. No, excuse me. We were just dumping them on the ground. And the instruction from him was to start digging a hole and putting the waste in holes, burying it. Evidently, as he said, it was offending them. Never question his word, but that's what we were told, right? And so in the morning, after that happened, we get ready, and it's just getting daylight. The sun's just coming up, and we're lined up to go in. And I look over, and there is a head. It's a huge head, and it's walking from my left. I'm looking north. It's walking from my left to my right, and it's just the head and part of the shoulders because of the incline. And he just walks right by me. He's down there, and I see him, and he doesn't even look at me. He just keeps walking, right? And he just walks amongst the trees, and like not a care in the world of whether I saw him or not, And then, we heard a few weird sounds. There started being a few pebble tossing here and there, just enough to make you jumpy and keep you on edge. But no big stuff until we get to 20. And then from 20, pandemic hits. We still do things, but now we all camp close together, and we're a little more nervous. But it's a pandemic, and we really don't have anything happen. And then in 21, this is when life-changing things happen. People can say what they want, but I was not alone in these happenings. There was sometimes as many as 30 or 40 people that are going through the same things and going through this. So in 21, we go up to the land, and there's me, my son, my wife, her sister, the leader, and this other woman who's going to sit out for a while. She's going to sit and pray, fast. And we get up there in 21, and we get there. My wife's sister is there, right? Now she's my wife's adopted sister in the native way, and her name's Tanya. And this girl is part Mexican, and there's nothing in the world that makes her afraid. She's just got she's got warrior energy, right? She's sitting in her car, and she said she's been hearing noises, and she's sitting in her car ready to go, which really kind of surprised me because I've known this woman for 10 years at this point, and I've never seen her afraid. And so we get out, and the spiritual leader walks into the woods, not far, maybe 10, 15 yards, and he's standing out there, and he starts singing song. And he stopped singing, and the woods got quiet. And it was like he was listening, and then he came back, and he gathered us that were there, and he said, "Come here." And so we walked out. He said, the Chiye-Tanka that are here are different than the ones before. We're like, "What?" And he said, "There's different ones here. These are warriors. These are Akishita." Well, Akishita is maybe a word for warrior. Zuya is maybe a word for warrior. I can't remember what the word, but there were warriors, right? And we said, okay. And the energy was different. The energy was different. And then when we progressed in the year, we had this guy come over from Switzerland. And he was going to sit out, right? He was going to sit out in 21. So he gets put out down in the mountain in this little valley. We put him out there. And the first night, it was me and my son, and you have to have a fire going, right? The whole time you're doing stuff, you have to have a fire going, so you have to have someone watch your fire. He's picked his friend who's a female, and the guy that I do stuff with, he allows women to do fire. And me and my son are there, and she's watching fire, and we're talking, and me and my son go to bed, and we're in there about an hour. We're not sleeping, and she comes over to my tent, and she says, "You need to come over here. There's something going on." So me and my son get out, and we walk over to where we have the fire, and she says, "Over there." Now, the Vietnam veteran lives up the hill. We're down you pull down that driveway. First, you come to our area, and then you take a left, and you go up the hill probably about 100 yards, right? He lives up there. Now, he has a horse over there, and he has an alpaca. One of his alpacas died just before we get there, and there was rumor that maybe a Bigfoot got his alpaca, but he never confirmed it. She said, "There's something over there." And so we're standing there, once again, it's dark up there, and where she's pointing to where the crowd is, you can't see anything. You can hear the horse occasionally, but you can't see anything. And you hear that, hoo-hoo, hoo-hoo. And if you've been out in the woods and you hear that, and it's one of them, you know that that's not an owl because it's too big, right? It's just too big. And it's hoo-hoo. And we're like, what? Because now it gets your attention because it's a big voice. This is coming from a big voice box. And it goes, hoo-hoo. Blah, 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 blah. It starts doing that. Holy cow. The hair stood up on my head. It still does thinking about it. And it did that for about 15 seconds, blah, 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 making those weird noises, and then it stopped. We're looking up there, we're like, wow. Needless to say, we didn't go to sleep, but there was nothing else happening, right? And the dawn came, and me and my son, we went to sleep, and then we got up, and we had to go get Mike, the singer I talked about, because he was coming up to help us. So we got Mike, and we came back to the land, and the day went uneventful, and we were hanging out, and then it got dark. And we were hanging out, and about 11 o'clock, you heard a scream. It was more fierce than the Ohio. It was deep. It resonated. It was coming from where the Swiss guy was sitting. And it made your organs move a little bit. It was loud, it was deep, and it was fierce. And we all jumped up and we looked at each other, and my son's looking for the big spotlight. And what are we going to do? Because when someone's sitting out, no one's supposed to see them. They're sitting out there by themselves. You're not supposed to, the only person who's supposed to see them is the spiritual leader who takes them out there, and he's sitting out there, and he looks at us, and then the second scream goes. And it's loud and it's fierce. And he looks at us and he goes, "We got an angry Bigfoot." And then he does something, I don't know what. He starts going down there to where that guy is. Now, it's down in the valley. It's black. It's coal miners black down there. And this thing has just screamed twice. And the other two guys grabbed the light and they start taking the trail, but he's across country because it's maybe 100 yards down there. And as we're moving down there, you hear a third scream from the same area. It's just loud. It probably goes on for 5 or 6 seconds, and it is just so powerful. And we stop when we're kind of close because we're not supposed to look at that guy. And he walks up on him, and he starts talking to the guy, and they talk back and forth, and he turns around and he points with his head, and we start walking up the hill without the guy. I'm like, what is this dude is not coming back with us? You got to be nuts, dude. And so we get back up to where we're having the fire, and the dude says he feels protected within his space, and he doesn't know what it was, but it woke him up. And so we let him stay out there, and the next day we went and got him, and we put him in the lodge. And when you're done sitting out and you go in the lodge, you tell your story, what you prayed about, or maybe something you received. And he said that later that night, when he was sitting in that spot, they came and they sat outside the spot and they talked to him in his head. And they said, I want you to tell your spiritual leader, thank you for helping us and praying for us. And that was his message. I'm like, wow. All right. So we get through that, and then we have the children's ceremony coming up on the same land. Now we've moved it to this land, and there's only a few of us. Travel restrictions, right? So we're going to have this children's ceremony up there, and there's a tree there that we're going to use, and there's only like 5 or 6 of us, right? And we get started. This children's dance is different from the other things we do. We start later in the day, and we don't have to completely fast. And we get started on that first day, right? And we are doing our thing, and we're resting, and we're going in and praying and dancing. And we had a place, there was an old dilapidated trailer, 1 bedroom, probably a 45-footer, maybe some old RV trailer that someone had parked on his land and just left it. And the men would go back there to go bathroom, go urinate. That's where you would go. And it was right next to the lodge, and then you go between the lodge and the trailer, and you go back there, and there was a big blackberry brambles that were all on this west side. And so I go over there. There's only 5 of us, and I walk over there to go to the bathroom. I'm wearing a ceremonial skirt, no shirt, barefooted. And I walk over there, and I move my skirt to go to the bathroom. I'm looking down, and I look up, and there he is. He's 8 feet away from me, maybe 9, tops 10 feet. He's that close. He is crouched down in the blackberry bramble bush, and he's made a big circle, because he must have been there for a while. He's looking me in the eye. He looks exactly like Patty, except this dude is, I'm not exaggerating, he's 5 feet across the shoulders. If I weigh 240 pounds, he weighs 1,000. That's how much bigger he was than me. He was massive, massive. And the way that he's crouched down there, he's able to see me. And if I'm 6'1", he's looking me in the eyes. I figure he's 8 feet, maybe a little over 8 feet. His chest is bare, almost like a gorilla. The hair on his arms and his legs is long, 3-4 inches. His head is slightly conical, but not like people say. It's not round, but it's not conical. It's somewhere in between, right? He's looking at me, and he has no whites. His eyes are totally black. There's no whites in his eyes. The first thought that goes through my head is, you don't smell. I don't know why. Maybe because by this time I was listening to all kinds of podcasts and stories about people talking about how bad they smell. And I'm looking at him, and that's the first thought, is like, you don't smell. Now, I realize his arms, this is probably pretty close. If he's 8 or 9 feet away from me, his arms are long enough that I feel like he could grab me. I really do. The way that he is leaned forward, it's almost like a gorilla does, because their arms are so much longer, but his legs aren't short like that. His legs are like massive. The way he's haunched, I mean, the energy that is contained in this being, just by the way that he is moved, the way that he has set himself, is like amazing. It's overwhelming. And I just looked at him, and I think that we probably stood there. I know it's hard to, but I'm gonna say a couple minutes. He just kind of looks. Once in a while, he kind of tilt his head, but he wasn't threatening me. I mean, if he wanted to do anything to me, I'd have been. There was nothing I was gonna do. There was nothing I was gonna do. There was nothing. And he looked at me, and I'm the one that turned away. I'm like, I gotta go get my sister-in-law. She's got to see. She's got to see this. My sister-in-law has always had my back. And I went to get her, and we came back, and he was gone. And I've only gone, it took me 30 seconds to grab her and bring her back there. He has left that spot, that big, he's like pushed the blackberry brambles down, like making a bed, but there's no trail in or out, and he made no sounds. And I'm like, he was right here, dude. And she's like, well, I believe you because I can look in your eyes. I believe you, but he was gone, right? And so we have that. And then we get done with children's dance, and then in August we have that ceremony. It takes all those days. So in the 4 days we're getting ready, we are all camping close together now. Well, the men and the women are camping close together, and the people who run the kitchen are up on the hill. And we start doing this thing that we do for all these days. And I'm sitting under like a shade arbor. We rest under a shade arbor, and I'm looking around. I look back to where you can kind of tell where the Swiss guy sat. And as I'm looking down there, I see this tree that is, it's old growth, has fallen over into this other tree. And as I'm just kind of looking, because, when you're out there for, you're doing something for 4 days without food and water, you get interested in a lot of other things. And so I'm looking, and as I follow the big tree that fell into the other tree, it fell into a tree that had a Y, and somebody's built a platform up there. And as I look closer, the platform also has a roof. And it's big. We all can see that this platform with the roof on it, on top of these trees, looks down in the spot where the Swiss guy was sitting. It was almost like they could have been up there, and they could have come down that tree and been right where the Swiss guy was so quick to protect him, because that was the feeling that we had, that it had protected him. That really blew us away, right? And so the leader is telling us, yes, they are here to watch over us because we're doing important work, and they love the children. And even this thing we do outside the children's dance is also for the children in a different way. And so he tells us, to pray for them, for their help, and tell them thank you, and not to be afraid, because he says to us, and this is the thing that's hard for us, they want to come into the fire. And so everything that we do, and natives would say everything that runs, that's, about praying and stuff, there has to be a fire. From start to finish, you have to have a fire going at all times. And if it goes out, then it's over. And so he says they want to come to the fire. And everybody looks at each other, and he's the first one to say, makes me nervous, because what do they want? They want to contact us. So we get done with 21, and then we move into 22. Now we know when we go up to land in 22 that they're around, right? We know that there's different ones around. And as soon as you go up to land in 22, you know. Now, like years before with the other ones, you could tell where they were. And when we got there and we're standing around, the spiritual leader said, they're over there, they're there. And when he had you look over there to feel that you could feel it. He knew exactly where they were. And when he pointed it out, it was this weird thing. You didn't know, but as soon as he pointed it out, you did know. And there was 5 or 6 of them. And the energy was like, if you've ever been around somebody that was like in the SEALs or Force Recon or Green Berets, they have an aura. They have an aura that says, don't mess.
Absolutely.
Don't mess, right?
Yep.
That's what they felt like. They felt like these are some warriors and don't mess. And so as we take that in, right, we're like, okay, this is all right. They're not going to hurt us. So we get this girl sitting in the lodge, and she's going to be out for a couple of days. And we get her fire going, and we're taking turns. Me and my sister-in-law, we're taking turns. So she gets up to feed the fire, then I get up the next hour. So you get a couple hours sleep, right? She does it, then I do it. So it's my turn. I set my alarm, and I get up about 3 o'clock on this first night we're up there. And I feed the fire, and all of a sudden I hear this noise. It's a battle. It's a battle that's involving things that aren't me, that aren't. It's a battle between those warriors and whatever they have gotten down there. It's to the north of us, down the hill, and they are going at it. I mean, it is, you can feel that it's tooth and nail. And as fast as it got started, it was over. And when it stopped, you knew that something died. You knew something got killed. There was no There was no denying it. And here's one of the weird things. No one else woke up. And I'll get to some why that really in some of our later things. No one wakes up, right? No one. I'm like, how did you guys not wake up? And so I went back to sleep, and we get through the night, and I said to anybody, did you guys hear anything? People like, no, I didn't hear nothing. And the spirit guy looks at me and says, yeah, I did. And so we get through the day, and now as it's getting into evening, where you're always watching the weather, there's a chance of rain. Now we got to make a decision. Now we got to keep this fire going, right? We can't let the fire going out. And you can keep a fire going in any rainstorm. I don't know if people know this, just by making sure that it's really hot when it starts and keeping it fed. You can keep a fire going. And as last resort, there's an old wood burning stove in that old dilapidated trailer, right? That's the last resort. You can move some fire in there. So we got to make the decision. Are we going to stay for the fire and keep our fire going, or is it spiritually they're going to bring her out early? And he talks to us because we're helping him, and we say, let's do it. Let's go the night. We can keep it going. And we make that decision, and there's something behind this little green building that's up there. Something snapped. Something big stepped on something. Now, at first, I thought it was Bigfoot. I'm like, that's awful close, and that's awful freaking big, dude. I've heard you guys before. That's massive. The spiritual leader's looking over there, and he says, let's go get her. And I'm like, wow. I thought, so we have a tent set up that my wife and her sister are sleeping in. And it has some cots, right? And so we're going to go get this girl, and we hear a woo. It's up by where the road comes into the land. So it's a mile away, right? And then, so that's on north. If you're looking north, it's right there. 180 over in the south, you hear a woo. And then between that south and north on the 180 towards the west side, there are whoops going on. There now, you know, there's 5, 6 of them. They're whooping to each other, and they're moving. They're moving towards us. We get that girl out of the lodge, right? We get her. The girls get her over into this tent, and we sit on these 2 cots. And there's 5 or 6 of them, right? Now the whoops are getting louder. Whoop, whoop, and they're moving. They're moving together. And as we're sitting in there, and he starts to talk to her and do some stuff, the noise is louder, and they're converging. And now they're over by the lodge and over by that trailer. And the whooping is going up in decibels, right? And she's talking very calmly because she's still doing whatever she's doing, you know, praying and doing what she did. You start to feel your body shake. The hairs on your body just start to rise, and they're whooping, right? And now it's coming into almost like one whoop. And as she's talking, this is this weird dichotomy, right? This girl who a little bit ago was praying and was fasting, and now has been taken out of that zone, still in that zone in her head and her spirit, and she's talking about what she went through, and we're listening, and you hear that woo, woo, woo. And now, I'm not kidding, it's as loud as a jet airliner. It's 120 decibels, dude, and they are just rocking your body. It is one voice, woo, 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 and they are just putting it on. Oh man. We're looking at each other, and it's like, what are we doing? Because they are loud. They are loud, and it's 5, 6 of them. The spiritual leader says, we got to go. And now we're sitting in a tent, mind you, right? Canvas, right? We're sitting in this tent, but something about that feels safer than getting out and running for the cars, dude. But he says, we got to go. And so the ladies grab her, and I run to one of the trucks. And the first thing I do, so the truck's probably about 40 feet up the hill, and the lights faced right down on the lodge and the trailer. I run right up there, and I hit the lights, and there is nothing standing there. Nothing. I'm like, what is going on here? And we load her up, and we take off. And we come back the next day, and it's all fine. It's all fine. Right? So the next year, that's all happens. It just gets wilder and wilder. This is still 22. So yes, 22, we get further into the year, right? So we do the children's dance there, nothing happens. And then we do that dance we do in the summer. And we have told everybody in the circle, everybody who comes, people come from all over the country. Some people come from different parts of the world. We all convene to pray for good things, to have community, and then go in to suffer together. And we've told the whole community what's happened. And this is the spiritual leader that I do stuff. He doesn't hold anything back. You know full well what you're going to get involved with anytime you're doing anything with him. And so we go up there, right? And we get something now where he's got the men and women camp close together, and the cook shack has been told, hey, pay attention, because they're up on the hill. The cook shack, on the first day of us doing things, where they cook for the supporters and the singers and the firekeepers, because the dancers don't get any food. The singer is the cook. The main cook is my sister and her friend, and they're up there, and they know, all of a sudden they know Bigfoot's around. My sister's pretty aware, so they know they're up there. But we don't know that because we're sequestered. When you start the ceremony as the participants, you become sequestered. So we're down there and we're doing our thing, and we're fasting and we're doing our thing and going in and out of the circle, and they're having their own experiences, but they're not too not scaring them, right? And so we get done with the first day and we finish up, and so now we're all camped close together. My wife and her sister camped close. We're not usually supposed to do that, but the leader felt like we needed to stay together. And we're all getting ready for bed, and as we lay down, it's about 9 o'clock. It's still light out. I say goodnight to my wife, and she says, and we lay down, and you hear a woo, and we're like, oh, they're here. They're here. And people got up. We've been up since 4 o'clock in the morning. We've been doing this all day in the sun. We want to rest, but everyone gets up, right? We all come down by the fire. And we bring the cook staff down, and because the leader wants us all together, right? And we're standing down with the fire, and you can hear them out there making all kinds of, it's like they're going through their whole repertoire of sounds. The hooting, the shrill whistles, the scream, they're out there making noise. And we're all together. Now, this is what I talked about earlier about one of the things about seeing them. This is when this happens. So we're all standing down by the fire, which is close to the lodge, right? And we're looking to the west. We're looking around. And the leader has the mic sing the Bigfoot song, and he sings that, and we make prayers like, he has different people pray like, we're not your enemies. We're here to, we're here for ceremony, and we respect your right. We're just, we're being very courteous and very respectful. And then there he is. Over to the west and to the right a little bit, there he is. He's standing on a trail. He's more reddish blonde than he is black. His eyes are amber. They're almost golden, right? And his eyes are golden. He's standing down that path, and so he makes him about 8 to 9 feet tall. He's not as massive as the black one I saw, but he's a big dude, and he's standing there. Now, here's where it really gets weird about who can see him. There is 18 to 20 of us standing there, right? It breaks down to about half can see him clear as day, and the other half can't see him at all. At all. I don't know what you're pointing at. And other people are like, he's right there. He's right there. And he stood there probably for 4 or 5 minutes, not threatening, just looking at us, right? I don't know if it was the Bigfoot song or the way that we had, said prayers and were reading, but he just stood there. And we're thus that I could see him are just like, wow, you seeing this? The other one's like, I wish I could see it. And that's what people say. Why can't I see it? And then he just turned and walked away. And so when he walked away, you all gathered, and people had questions. Why couldn't I see him? And our leader, he couldn't tell us. It was like certain people could and certain people couldn't. And with this crowd, it was not a lack of non-believers. Believe me, this crowd believes. They believe in him. They believe in the Bigfoots. They believe in the spiritual realm. They believe in prayers. And half of them couldn't see him, right? And so we're sitting there, and they're out in the woods, and they're making occasional noises. And this is the weird thing. I go lay down in the height of this and I go to sleep. It's like you can get used to anything. They're out there whistling and hooting and making, and I guess it went on till like 5 or 6 in the morning. No, 4. We get up at 4. It went on until 4 o'clock in the morning. They're just out there making noise, right? And we got up, and the next 3 nights we were out there. First night, second night, third night, they made noise. They were out. They knew you were out, and they were out there so long doing it, you could differentiate who was who. This one is, almost like, let's just give them numbers. Oh, that's number 1. Oh, that's number 3, right? You could differentiate the different ones from each other just by them being around so much. And so on the 4th day, when we get done, the leader asked us, this is the activity's getting pretty crazy. Do you guys want to stay or do you want to go home? And we all just decided to stay, right? So we watch him. We got done about 6 o'clock and we watched a movie. He has a big movie screen. That's what we do. We unwind and we all went to bed. About 3 o'clock in the morning, my brother-in-law, who's been watching the fire, says, Steve, they're here. And I get up, and he'd gotten up for some reason, and he was sitting there whittling. And he looked over and he saw this orb. He saw these red orbs floating, and that's what got his attention, right? These red orbs. And when he was looking, the red orbs turned into eyes. And there were 2 of them standing over there. And we went over the next day, they were between 9 and 10 feet tall from where they were standing and what he saw. And they were the orbs turned into eyes. That was the best way he could put it. We're like, okay. I mean, at this point, Jeremiah, anything is possible, and you're not denying anything that you see. And natives will tell you around ceremony, things really get different. So we packed it up, and we didn't have any. We went up for sweat a couple of times more, and then nothing happened. And then into 23 was our last year there. And so we're going up there in 23, and it's me and my wife, my son, and a friend of ours. We're going to go up there and have sweat and meet people up there, right? And we're pulling off the gravel into his dirt road, right? And you got to really slow down because it's rutted and it's steep. And we ease in there, and as we come around the corner and we start going down the hill, off to our right in the woods, I think me and my son probably saw it clearly. My wife saw part of it, and our friend Lori saw part of it too. You saw a white flash, like open up, like a big white flash, and you saw this big black thing step into it, and the light went gone. I saw the whole thing. My wife, who was sitting next to me, she saw parts of it. Lori, who was on the right side, saw part of it, and my son, who was sitting behind me in the back seat, he saw most of what I saw. And my wife said right away, I went to tell the other ones we're here. And I'm like, wow. Now, was it a doorway? I would think so. Did I make it up? No. Saw it clear as day. So we drove down there. It's like, okay, it's starting again. We get ready. This is 23. We get into the days when we get ready, right? And we're all up there, and we're camping together. The cook shack is down by the circle. We're not 100 feet from each other now. We have been through some stuff together, and we know they're around. It's like the second day of getting ready, where we get everything done. We chop wood, we get everything ready. We make sure all our regalia is ready to go. We get everything ready to go. We're standing over by a shed where we kept our stuff, and I happen to look over, just looking over, and I see 2 of them. It's definitely a female. I see breasts, and a small one. And they're standing in these trees, and the trees have branches that kind of come over, so it's almost like a doorway, right? And they're standing right there, and she's probably 7 feet. And he's no more than 4 or 5 feet. And I said, whoa, it's broad daylight out. And I said to somebody, hey, do you see this? And pretty soon everybody's over there. And once again, about half of us could see him and half couldn't, but it's not the same people. Some people who saw him before are seeing him now, And people who saw him before aren't seeing him. It's a weird thing. They're not seeing him this time, and others that did are seeing these two. And I'm like, what is, it's weird. So half of us, and as we're looking at him, the spiritually looks, he said, they want something from us. And he's standing there and he's doing his thing. I don't know if you've ever seen how spiritual leaders lead. They do the whole thing. They kind of, they go still. It's like they're listening and they're not there. Their body's there and they're just very still and their spirit is doing something. And he's listening. And when he's backing himself and he turns to us, they leave. And he says, that one needs help. The little one needs help. And we're like, well, what do you mean? And we're going to do, I'm not going to give it a name, but we're going to do a night ceremony this night. And it's in this house. The Vietnam veteran is staying at his girlfriend's. And he has a house on top of the hill. And we're going to go up there. And we're going to black out all the windows and doors, and we're going to have a ceremony at night. And the people who live this way know what I'm referring to. He's that kind of leader. He says, they're going to come. And so, we get in sweat, and we go up there, and we get everything ready. And he gets ready, and then we do things for him, and then we turn the lights off. We've covered all the windows, so it's totally black in there, right? And the singers get going and their song is going, and all of a sudden the energy for you just changes. I mean, it's intense to begin with, right? If you've ever been to one of these night ceremonies, it's mind blowing. The man who's leading us says they're here, and goes on to tell us that there is a clan of Bigfoot standing all around this house, and they have their hands on the house. And he says there's about 20 to 24 of them standing out there, so this little one can receive healing. And we sing through it, and the energy is more than I've ever seen. I've been to a lot of these. And he gets done, and when the lights come back on and he's there, he says, I'll just say as he said it. He said that the little one had taken some kind of spiritual hurt and needed a spiritual healer. And that's what they had been doing around, and they have been trying to get our attention to do that. And he finally heard it. And when we got done, you felt this like feeling of gratitude coming from the woods. It went from that fierce warrior stuff to almost loving coming out of the woods, right? And as we are getting ready on the third or fourth day, we have a pair of twins that come. There were 9 little twin girls. They saw one, and these girls, while we're all doing this, freaking out at Bigfoot and trying to keep our act together, the 2 9-year-olds are in their tent playing Bigfoot. They're not afraid at all. When we're walking down the hill one day, they said, there he is. He has a man's face. And they took off running, and someone grabbed him. And they're like, what do you mean? They said, he was standing right there, and he had a man's face. I'm like, whoa. So we were like, okay, they're here. Started on our first day, and they were out in the woods. Same gang, same sounds, but not as close and not as intimidating. And it went on for 3 nights. First night, second night, it went on. And it was kind of almost comforting, right? And they started doing this little whistle thing. And you knew where they were, but it wasn't like any of the whooping, it wasn't the screaming, it wasn't the samurai chatter. It was just nice and gentle, and you felt good. And on the 4th morning, we got up and we all did our thing, and the leader gathered us together, and he said they've gone. He said they left in the night. There's only 2 of them here. And some people are like, well, why did they go? And he says, we will find out today. It's more of that cryptic medicine or spiritual leader stuff. They sometimes pretty cryptic, right? And they know the answers, and they want you to find out on your own, right? So this is the last day, and we start doing what we're doing, right? And we're out in the middle for a while, and then we sit down, and this is how the day goes, right? We're out in the middle, probably about 2, 3. It's hard to tell. It's sometime in the afternoon. Now, where we do the thing is a clearing, and there's woods all around us, right? And as we are out in the middle and the singers are going and we're doing our thing, this black helicopter comes into view. And he's only about 500 feet off the deck. This helicopter, it's probably a 4 or 5 seater. It's not tremendously large. It's all black and the windows are tinted. And there are no tail signs. It's a black helicopter with no tails. And it's above us. And it's just hovering up there. And, we're doing our thing. And every so often we have to look to the sky and raise our hands, right? We do that. And there it is. And he probably hovered around there for 5 or 6 minutes, just watching. He wasn't that far. And then he spun to the north. And he went to the north where most of the activity goes on, right? And we didn't see him. And then we got done. Okay, so we get done and we're like, what was that all about? And, we come out, we get our things done, we have our meal, and we're resting and we're going to watch a movie. That's our tradition. Then when we get done doing this, we have a movie. It's probably about 9 o'clock. And all of a sudden down in the north, in that big valley, there's automatic gunfire. It's not the shotguns and the rifles and the pistols that you occasionally hear up there. I was in the service. It's automatic weapons, dude. And they open up. It probably goes on for 2 or 3 minutes. There's some heavy action going. It's automatic weapons, right? And then it's quiet. And now we're all looking, because we don't want to get, it's down there, hoping those stray shots. But we have this feeling of dread. Everyone does. We are concerned for our friends. Because that's where they mainly are when they are around. And we, the gunfighting's over after 2 or 3 minutes. You don't hear nothing. We go to bed and we get up the next morning and we're going to pack up. And the spiritual leader tells us that they knew that the helicopter was coming and they skied out. And what happened down there was the 2 that stayed back. They tried to kill them. That was the automatic gunfire. They had tried to kill our friends. We don't understand why. We don't know why. He didn't know why. I can't tell you who was in the black helicopter. No clue. But I know gunfight when I hear one. And that's what happened there. And this last year we had to move. And the only thing that happened is because we're closer to a city now, is one of them walked through the middle of our camp at night. We all woke up, right? We're like, oh, because we're all in different tents now. We're sequestered, and men and women are not camped together because we have room. And everybody heard it, and everybody's like, oh, it's the firekeeper. Well, the firekeeper weighs 250. Whatever was walking around weighed 800 or 900, right? And in that last year, before we left that land, on Dan's land, that was another, we found one track. I put my foot next to it. I think it was the only track we ever saw. It was probably 18 to 20 inches long. Probably at the ball of the foot, probably 6 to 7 inches. And when I stood next to it, I'm 240, I didn't indent the ground at all. And this track was probably an inch in the dirt. An inch down in the soft kind of clay stuff. An inch deep. Massive track. It was the only track that we ever saw. We thought we saw something before, but this one was clearly a track. And, when people ask us about it, they said, well, any pictures and recordings? And as people know who are natives, we don't record anything from ceremony. Cameras and recording devices are not allowed. And I was told by the leader to come on to let people know, the natives, as we all know, we all have some relationship with Chiye-Tanka. And some of us, forest brothers like the Cherokee, to the place where I go, they're protectors of children. But you got to remember, other tribes have them as the eaters of men. And they're not all kind and gentle, but they do all have to abide by certain physical and spiritual laws. So if you see them out in the woods, and you don't fire at them or try to do something to them, you're most likely going to walk away. And almost 99% of the time, your encounter is not random. Now, it's not to be said that you can't sneak up on them if the wind is right and your aura is right, and you're very calm and you're not trying. But you remember, when you're out in the woods, your aura is that of a predator. And predator has a different kind of energy, and they pick up on that. Do they take us out? Yes, they do. They kill. There are some that kill human beings, without a doubt. Everyone knows that. We know our relationship with them. We know that if some people have very kind relationships, you got lucky and had, just like human beings, you found a Bigfoot that is kind and gentle, wants to have a relationship with you, but with you only. And the thing that I think people realize, and maybe I'll share this, and I don't know if it's a secret, your ability to see or have some kind of encounter has a lot to do with what you believe. What you believe is possible. Now, that's not something that can be detected in someone or by looking at them, but it's inside of you. If you have the ability to believe, of course you're going to be able to see and have some kind of encounter. Looking for and researching them, we all know they're there. They say that, and what we've heard from them is that they say, what do you need? Short of a body, right? Short of a body. No one's ever going to believe, especially with AI. But they are there, and they've been here for a long time. There's more than people know. Remember, there's never just one. There is never just one. And the last thing is that, what we were taught is that head shaking thing is them trying to go against a mandate. Or there's a word like a law, like a spiritual or physical law. When they start shaking that head, you got to be moving. You got to be moving, because that means they're going to attempt to do something. If they want you to be deceased, it doesn't take much. And when we have encounters, sometimes one of the things that we have to remember is maybe there's worse things out there that they are protecting us from. Because if the possibility of Bigfoot is there, and we know it is, there's other things that are possibility. Dogmen, we've all heard of that. The legends of what the people on this land have, Wendigos, different kinds of shapeshifters. If Bigfoot is real, those things can possibly be real too. And maybe they're protecting us from a lot of things that are out there. Don't ever point guns at them. They can smell gunpowder. That's how they know what it is, and they know, can it kill them? I don't know what happens to them when they die, because we've never, my own thinking is that their body dissipates, but maybe it goes back to the dimension where the part of them comes from. I don't know. But I know that they are not just a physical being, but they are a physical being. They need sustenance, they need water, they need all they need to reproduce. But they have things that they can do that I have seen and been part of that are things that humans can't do. That's about what I got.
William, absolutely fascinating. You had talked about Eugene, and I mean, I know you know that I really love that area. East of Eugene, I should say. Is there an area then that I should be cautious of going into, or just be aware?
It is you. I listened to your show. Your heart is in the right place. You're not a threat. You don't want to harm them. Do I think there are places not to go? Yes, I do. Can I tell you where they are? No, because it depends on which ones you're dealing with.
Sure.
Right? There are some that tolerate us pretty well. There's some that want to have a relationship. And there's other ones that like to step on our head. But it sounds like I listened to your show, was that in Oregon where you had them unzip your tent?
That was actually in Iowa.
Iowa way.
Yeah. Yeah, that was Iowa, where I live. That was nuts.
Where at?
I can't say on air, but we can talk off. Yeah.
Do you remember what Iowa stands for?
It's the Iowa tribe, correct?
No. See, when I was in South Dakota, Iowa stood for idiots out wandering around.
Yeah. You got it. I'm not originally from the state, so it doesn't bother me. But yeah, we have a lot of fun out here. So
you do.
Oh yeah. I'm originally from Western Mass, so yeah, it's a different world out there.
I would say that the further north that you get, the meaner they get.
In Oregon?
And the bigger. The further north into Canada.
Ah, yes, of course.
The one I had in Eugene was very protective. I can't say because most of my encounters have been in the Sierra Madres and then in Mount Washington. I think that you need to ask yourself what you want to do. You want to have a relationship? You want to see them? You want to hear them? What do you want to do?
I mean, I absolutely want to. I would love to see one next. That is something that I've come to internally. Yeah, I'm there. I am absolutely there.
I told myself when I was told they were coming around, and I was like, yeah, I'll see one. And when I did, I think I was blessed by having the one who showed himself to me, not to be threatening. I, however, saw that he could have been in a minute, in the wrong circumstance, right? But he was a nice guy. But I also believe that anything is possible. I really do. After being in these ways all my life and seeing the things that I have seen, I think that will do for most people out there. If you want to have an encounter in the best way, is that once the mindset is that anything is possible, most things become possible.
If, let's say, you have people listening where they are reaching out to them, and there's conversations going on, what is our responsibility when it comes to that?
Our responsibility is in Native ways, and especially the people I belong to, is to treat everyone as a relative. Have that respect for their space, their ways, because their ways are different than ours, right? But I will tell people, Bigfoot and Sasquatch are drawn to Native American ceremony. If you start talking to people who go to ceremony, they're always around. They are drawn to ceremony. I think that is the spiritual component of them. They have a deep spiritual component that people, you've heard people tell, looking into their eyes is a life-changing experience.
No, absolutely. 100%. I don't know if you've ever heard me talk about this, because I think I've talked about it maybe once. The Sunday after the festival in Oak Ridge, or was it Monday? And I was driving around, and a gentleman there, William, had said, or Bill, he'd said, "Are you ready to see one?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." So I was driving around the reservoir, and I was like, "I am ready to see one." The second afterwards, I drove by this tree, a pine tree that was covered in ivy. This is wild. And I saw the silhouette of one in the ivy for like half a second, and then it disappeared. And I was like, "Whoa, what just happened, dude?" It was wild.
Do you feel like that was one?
I don't know. I honestly don't know, because I had gotten a really bad infection in my legs out there, and so I was starting to take antibiotics, and I don't know if that was like, I had a fever at the time, so I honestly don't know. I want it to be,
Well, one of the pieces of advice that I would tell everybody in a lot of things is, one of the things when we want something, you have to know what that looks like. So someone says, I wanted to be better. Do you know what being better looks like? I want to have more. Do you know what that looks like? You have to, in your mind, know what it looks like to you. Did you see one? My guess is yes, you did. You know, when you're in a so in ceremony, when you fast, you become different. When you have a fever, you become different.
Exactly.
Things that go on us, I think you did, but you have to tell yourself that you did it without any doubt. There's no room. The people that you talk to, I would imagine, I've been listening to your show for a year and a half. They don't have any doubt about what they saw, did they?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
There's no doubt at all.
Yeah. Oh man, this is great. Oh boy, William, it has been just a privilege to talk to you, and thank you for sharing just what a view inside something that most listeners would never experience, and it's very special that you have shared that. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Jeremiah.
We're gonna cut recording. I want to talk to you for a minute, if that's all right.
Okay, that's fine.
Just want to take a few minutes to say thank you to you, all my listeners, for listening to the podcast. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed. Share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list. The Subtle Lake area of Oregon, Rainbow, Oregon, McKinsey Bridge area, Sweet Home, pretty much that entire area, the north part, if you get what I mean. I'll see you back next time, listeners. Sasquatch Summerfest this year, July 11th through the 12th. It's going to be fantastic. July 11th through 12th in Green Waters Park in Oak Ridge, Oregon. And listeners, if you're going to go, you can get a 2-day ticket for the cost of one if you use the code BFS, like Bigfoot Society, but BFS. And it'll get you some off your cost. Priscilla was nice enough to provide that for my listeners. So there you go. I look forward to seeing you there. So make sure you head over to www.sasquatchsummerfest.com and pick up your tickets today.